Imagine a country divided. On one side, those who enjoy a glass of beer or whiskey after a long day. On the other, those who believe alcohol is a dangerous evil. This was America in the early 20th century, on the verge of a social experiment prohibition. In 1920, the 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified. This amendment prohibited the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol. It marked the beginning of a 13-year period in American history known as Prohibition. This radical experiment sought to cure the nation's social ills by eliminating the consumption of alcohol. The dry forces, as they were known, believed that alcohol was the root of many societal problems. Poverty, crime, domestic violence, and social decay were all blamed on the demon drink. But the road to Prohibition was long and paved with complex motivations. This tumultuous period in American history continues to fascinate us. It was a time of social upheaval, political maneuvering, and unintended consequences. The story of Prohibition is a cautionary tale about the limits of social engineering and the enduring power of personal liberty. The temperance movement, advocating for moderation or complete abstinence from alcohol, had been gaining momentum since the early 1800s. Rooted in Protestant religious fervor, early temperance advocates saw drinking as a sin, a moral failing that corrupted individuals, families, and communities. The American Temperance Society, formed in 1826, spearheaded this early movement. They used moral suasion, urging individuals to take a pledge of abstinence. Their message resonated particularly with women who bore the brunt of alcohol's destructive effects on families. However, as the movement grew, it became increasingly political. The issue of alcohol became intertwined with other social issues of the day, such as poverty, immigration, and workers' rights. By the late 19th century, the temperance movement had evolved from a moral crusade into a powerful political force, culminating in the formation of the Anti-Saloon League in 1895. This organization employed aggressive lobbying tactics and political pressure to push for legal prohibition, marking a turning point in the fight against alcohol. The road to Prohibition was paved by a diverse coalition of voices, each with their own motivations for supporting the ban on alcohol. Among the most vocal and influential were the preachers, suffragists, and politicians who saw Prohibition as a path to a better society. Fiery preachers like Billy Sunday traveled the country, delivering impassioned sermons against the evils of alcohol. They painted vivid pictures of shattered families, ruined lives, and souls lost to the bottle. Their message resonated with deeply held religious beliefs and fueled the moral outrage that propelled the movement forward. The suffrage movement, fighting for women's right to vote, found common cause with the temperance movement. Women, often denied political power, bore the brunt of alcohol's destructive effects on families. They saw Prohibition as a means of protecting women and children from domestic violence, poverty, and neglect. Politicians, sensing a shift in public opinion, saw an opportunity to capitalize on the growing support for Prohibition. They recognized the political capital to be gained by aligning themselves with the dry forces and pushing for legislation that would enact their goals. With Prohibition in effect, the U.S. government faced a daunting challenge, enforcing a nationwide ban on a substance deeply ingrained in American culture. Despite their best efforts, breweries and distilleries continued to operate illegally, supplying a thirsty public eager to circumvent the law. To deter consumption, the government took a drastic and deadly measure: poisoning industrial alcohol. Starting in 1926, the government mandated the addition of toxic chemicals including methanol, benzene, and formaldehyde to industrial alcohol, making it unfit for human consumption. This denatured alcohol was widely used in various industrial processes, but it was also readily available and cheaper than illicit liquor. The government believed that by making industrial alcohol poisonous, they could discourage people from drinking it. They underestimated, however, the desperation of those determined to have a drink and the lengths to which bootleggers would go to profit from the illicit liquor trade. This misguided attempt at deterrence had tragic consequences. Estimates suggest that over 10,000 Americans died from consuming poisoned alcohol during Prohibition. The poisonings disproportionately affected the poor and working class, who could not afford the higher prices of illicit liquor. The poison added to industrial alcohol had devastating effects on those who consumed it. Methanol, even in small quantities, could cause blindness, organ failure, and death. Other chemicals, like benzene, increased the risk of cancer and other long-term health problems. Newspapers of the day were filled with horrific stories of people dying or suffering debilitating illnesses after consuming poisoned alcohol. Blindness was a common consequence, with victims often left permanently disabled. Paralysis, seizures, and organ failure were also reported. These tragedies expose the tragic irony of Prohibition. A law intended to improve public health and morality had inadvertently created a public health crisis of its own. The government's attempt to enforce sobriety through poisoning had resulted in widespread suffering and death. The human cost of this misguided policy fueled growing opposition to Prohibition. It became increasingly clear that the cure for America's alcohol problem was proving far worse than the disease. Prohibition ended in 1933 with the ratification of the 21st Amendment. This marked the end of a tumultuous era in American history, where the government attempted to control the morality of its citizens through legislation. The end of Prohibition saw the return of legal alcohol production and sales, and a significant reduction in the crime rates associated with the illegal alcohol trade. With the repeal of Prohibition, the United States began the slow process of healing from the social and economic scars left by the noble experiment. The legal alcohol industry quickly rebounded, creating jobs and generating substantial tax revenue for the government. Bars, breweries, and distilleries reopened, and a sense of normalcy began to return to American society. However, the legacy of Prohibition remained. It had exposed the dangers of overreach in government policy and highlighted the unintended consequences of trying to legislate morality. The era also left behind a complex relationship between Americans and alcohol, one that continues to evolve to this day. As we reflect on this chapter in history, we are reminded of the importance of learning from our past. Prohibition serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of government intervention and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. The end of Prohibition was not just the return of legal alcohol, it was a victory for personal freedom and a testament to the enduring strength of the American people.